how
Mhm.
would you introduce yourself to our audience in 3 words?
That's a tough question. So I'm definitely a designer,
Mhm.
definitely an entrepreneur, and I would say education enthusiast.
Ah, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, you are a lecturer at Kyiv School of Economics, after all.
So
Since
that's why I
recently,
am.
right?
Yes, since just a couple of months
Yeah, cool,
ago.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, like you've also worked on our product together with us on some of the designs, so that's we know each other pretty well. That's not something that we're going to talk about today, and there's I think a million things that we can talk about that are very interesting. But we agreed today that we would limit ourselves to a new product or project that you are starting or have launched actually, and which you've fully built with no-code tools. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it is, who is it for, and my big question is also, does it already have a name?
So it kind of has a name, and it's like a working name. It is called Allsee.
Uh,
I'm sure once we get to customers, it will change, but so far it's Allsee. So the tool is a tool for education, and basically it employs AI to help tutors or teachers um, basically check the knowledge of their students. So while students are largely using AI to do the homework for them, we basically do the opposite. We ask AI to cover certain topics with students, ask questions, basically engage in a dialogue, and then evaluate how well students basically know the questions. And the trick is that while it evaluates, it does cover all of the topics with the student. And even if the student wasn't prepared, he or she will be prepared after this whole thing. So this is the idea. I'm sure we will tweak it many times before we get to something which has like product market fit. But so far, this is what we're playing with.
that sounds very interesting. And so you probably see a lot of work that because everyone does their homework or their things with AI, and you see many of these AI tools. What is if you sort of look at it from the tutor's perspective, what is for them the advantage of doing it with this tool? Like what do they get out of it? Because it seems like it helps them. Do they save time? How does it sort of benefit them?
Uh, you mean for tutors?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, it does. It saves time a lot, and sometimes it helps. Well, I personally use it a lot just as an idea generation,
Mhm.
just to overcome that like blank list, blocking. I just ask it to like give me 10 options for this task, to give me 10 options for that task, and this is how I basically start, and then it gets me basically going on when I'm preparing lectures. I wouldn't say that I use it a lot specifically for preparing materials, but I use it sometimes. It is interesting that at Kyiv School of Economics, where I teach, they have basically a policy of using AI, and for each specific course, teachers define to which extent and in which format they allow to students to use AI. So in my course, I allow them to use AI for idea generation.
Ah, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, because in the prep we were also talking about how I read this article about there's this teacher. So a friend of mine, he's a teacher in high school, and he shared this article which I found interesting. Is how a teacher was saying like, yeah, I'm trying to teach people to write, and writing is a very different skill, but everyone uses ChatGPT now, and in his eyes, it's terrible. Like you see the increase of certain words that people would never use, and my girlfriend said like paramount is such a word that you don't often use, but then within these ChatGPT texts, it sort of seems to dominate a lot of them, and I'm sure it's the same in different languages. Um, so, given that these tools are going to be around, and that you would sort of you would expect people to use them, has that sort of changed how teachers would teach things as well in your eyes? Because I can see that if you're trying to teach like writing, that's one thing, but economics, I can guess that it's very different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we need to learn to incorporate AI in a smart way. I don't think there is a way to avoid using it or to fully control that students do not use it. Of course, when you're teaching writing, it's pinnacle that students do not use it and that they write. But when you are doing some more, I would say, practical jobs, you would use it because it will save you time. So my vision is that where possible and where it makes sense, we could allow students to use it, but at the same time, they need to report how exactly they used it, why, and how they basically what they did with the answer, because you cannot just take the answer from AI and submit it as your work. You need to use it as a part of more like analytical or like more refined project work, I would say.
I think the hard thing there is that how do you test for that? Because also in the same article, he said like, yeah, I can see that it's written by AI, but then proving that it's written by AI is a whole different ballgame.
Mhm,
Like 90% of the text, he's like, I'm sure this is written by AI, but I can't prove it.
mhm.
It's just like it's terrible. and this is,
Yeah.
so how do you navigate that? When people say like, oh yeah, I use it in this way, okay, but how do you sort of then test that they actually have the skills that you want them to learn?
Uh, well, in my particular case, our course is very, very practical, and they actually need to do the project. So even if they use AI, they still have to do the project. So it's easy. But there is an approach which was established and now is highly promoted by Sal Khan, Khan Academy. So the approach is to employ AI to do basically interviews with students, or if we're talking about younger school students, as Khan Academy focuses, they employ AI to basically do the homework
Yep.
together with the student, and then basically this whole process of doing the homework is reported back to teacher. So for example, if a student with this AI tutor went through the tasks and went through a couple, like for example an essay, they went through a couple of iterations of essay, AI gave feedback, student made some
Mhm.
corrections, AI can report back that, yeah, like we did a couple of iterations, the student was engaged, and like the student really did the homework. Whereas if the AI just gets a like copy pasted text, which is one iteration and that's it, it's
Yeah.
very easy to track. So actually employing AI to be kind of personal tutor for students, I'm not talking about like doing the whole tutoring or giving lectures or running courses. I'm just talking about like specifically interviewing to examine knowledge or see the process of doing homework. I think it makes sense, makes a lot of sense. And I think this is the way we should use AI
Yeah, I
in education.
I I really like the idea because I remember back in high school, we had a math teacher who actually quit because his idea was like, okay, maths means that you have to do it 4 times a week because he's like, look, you're gonna do a couple of exercises at home, right? Like 5 or 10. You're gonna somewhere along that line, you're gonna get stuck, and then you need some help at school to get further because you're stuck. So you need to come in the next day, get unstuck in class, and then you can continue. And that point is different for everyone. And the fact that the point is different for everyone meant that he said, like, look, that's why I need 4 times a week, just one hour, and that's it. But with this type of technology, you can actually provide people with access to that type of help at home while they still do the work themselves. But they go like, hey, I'm stuck with this, and they can give tips and stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, 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 exactly. And it, of course, it doesn't substitute a real teacher, no way, but it gives a lot of help, and it really it expands, I would say, the bandwidth of a teacher. Teacher can focus on like what I call facilitation, doing project work, doing more complex stuff, group work, which really corresponds to what we do in real life after we graduate, while AI will take care of like bare knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that this can also be, I'm not sure that's a problem everywhere, but here at least it is like classes are pretty big now because there's not a lot of people who want to be a teacher. it's usually like high school level that's really tough. So classes become bigger, which means that there's less time to individually help students. Do you think that this can be a really good sort of solution to that problem? I wouldn't call it, but help to that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only the big classes, it's also the online learning because,
Mhm.
well, it was a problem during COVID. It is a problem for some regions still. And when, especially at school, when kids are learning online, this is by far not the same as like being physically present in the space and communicating, because this is how our brain works. It gets engaged in a dialogue. So and as the result, like for example, of COVID, I know that many in countries they witness a decline. So there is a complex testing which is done, I think, every 4 years, which is called PISA, among 80 countries that are in this basically in this PISA organization. And basically every country sees certain decline, and this is for 15 years old, I think. Certain decline in like the evaluated knowledge, and they attribute this decline to COVID. And this means that students basically have very unequal knowledge of like past courses,
Yeah.
and those gaps they need to somehow be filled in. And the basically right now the only way to fill them in is like some individual learning track and basically consultations with tutors, and this requires bandwidth. And AI can really fix this. And I really hope that either me or somebody else creates a product that will really help teachers to employ AI for the benefit.
Yeah. Well, you seem to be like in the right position. I mean, you're like you said. I always think of you as a creative, sort of like I said, creative analytical person, and you're now in sort of the teaching world. So I think that's a really good position to be in. To maybe make at least a product. Maybe there's not going to be one, but one of those that can help people. Because yeah, I see a lot of potential in that sense. Cool, thanks. So now that we know a little bit about what that is, we as you know always have this random question, which is one of a couple of questions. I'm going to spin our wheel and we'll see what it has in store for you. Tell us a painful truth about your industry.
Oh, painful truth. Yeah, it, a logical continuation of our discussion, with a disclaimer. I cannot really say that education is my industry, at least for now, because I'm a newbie in education. However, I've been really interested in this, and I've been looking at reports globally and locally in my country. Uh, I would say, and I like at the same time, I can say that I am very well aware of the situation from the employer side, because like I have
Yeah.
hired a lot of people into my company, and I know this pain. So the pain is there's a tangible gap between what students who just freshly graduated, what they can really do, what skills they have, and the skills that are needed for like real life jobs and real life employers. I know that in USA there is a big uh, countrywide program that is where people are tasked to overcome this gap, and there is it's a big problem, and it's a big
Mhm.
program, and a lot is being done. Um, I think that to fix this, we not only need to modernize the education and to basically redesign it. I think we need to completely change the view on education, and I think that AI only widened that gap. I think that education is something that already is happening as a lifelong thing. You keep learning, and right now, I'm like looking at students here, and here in Ukraine, students are not usually having a gap year or anything like this. right after school, they go to a college or university. And I think that, I hope that in like 5 or 10 years in this university, I would see people of all ages and a variety of courses, and a lot of, I would say, like customized learning path options.
That's interesting because that's also an opportunity for universities. So you mentioned the decline earlier of
Mhm.
sort of the quality. I've seen that in university as well, because the focus in universities is very much usually on, okay, look, this many people need to pass because they get paid based on how many people get a bachelor's degree or their master's degree, and that's sort of a perverse incentive there. So the opportunity of saying like, hey, but what if the university is there for people during the entirety of their careers and possibly after, to learn things and to update this, things like their knowledge and everything. That could be a big opportunity, provided that we change the model of how they would be yeah, sort of funded in that sense. That's a very interesting thought to yeah, to cover that gap in such a way. I had never thought about it like that. Thank you for that insight. Just a quick note for everyone who's tuned in. If you have a question to Olena, feel free to put it in some of the comments on LinkedIn or YouTube. We'll pick it up live in our Q&A section at the end. So feel free to do so. But before we go there, Elena, you've built this with a few tools, like it's obviously an AI tool. I think it's ChatGPT or something, and some other no-code solutions. I think you mentioned Webflow and Xano, and sort of tied that together. But that's interesting, because I feel that many people could actually benefit from these type of tools, when it sort of democratizes a lot of the technological things that used to be harder to achieve. But how can people or companies sort of foster this type of creativity that you've shown, and then sort of get to it? Because you built this in what, a couple of weeks, you said, I think, by yourself. So I mean, this is definitely within reach for people to do these things.
Well, I would say I can make like certain parallels with us using a computer. Back in the day, people would learn to use a computer. It was like a profession, computer operators or something like this.
Yeah.
But now everybody, kids use it. I think it's kind of similar. You can learn to use no code, and I'm sure no code has a lot of potential to develop into even more agile instrument that can be used even quicker than a couple of weeks to create a solution. But what I'm saying is, it really liberates you to experiment. So when I started with this idea, I was thinking, okay, I would need to use developers, and since my company does web and app development, I was like, yeah, I kind of have the resources, but those resources are always busy with like client projects. And I was like, yeah, but probably I will use them. But then I understood that the key value for me is flexibility. I'm going to experiment with this idea. I'm going to give it to users, to teachers, to students, ask for their feedback. I would want to experiment, tweak some things. I would want to not depend on anybody doing this, and I want to do it quickly. And of course, I want to fully like understand how it all works under hood and be able to work with that as well. So I was consciously choosing no code in order to be like, to have that flexibility and to have that level of control and independency. And that was really easy. This was my first time using no code. I started sorry, I started with Bubble, and then I switched to Webflow because, well, Webflow I used before as like more of a design instrument. And then Xano, I just watched their YouTube channel. When I had any question, I would ask ChatGPT when I had any question. And I have to say that the logic under hood, it is fairly complex, and it's not like just like simple I don't know, database query. It basically ties together the data. We use OpenAI API, and then Webflow is used as front end. And it is hilarious that when I was switching from Bubble to Webflow, I realized that I will need to write parts of JavaScript code. And this was basically what I was afraid of, because I'm absolutely not a developer. Then I was like, okay, let's ask ChatGPT. Maybe we'll figure something out. I ended up at some point, I was literally explaining to ChatGPT what the interface should look like some buttons and forms, and we styled it up basically using language.
Wow.
So yes, I think that right now at the state of no code and AI that is like present time, anybody could do that.
Yeah.
Literally anybody with no development experience.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and I think indeed, like I said, it's really interesting that you just did this in a couple of weeks with these tools, and you just look up. There's nothing really holding you back except for sort of maybe having an idea. How did you, like, other ideas or something? How do you come up with these things? Like, yeah, this came to you, I guess, in a way, but how can maybe people sort of structure their idea? Because you said iterative work, sort of quickly iterating, making changes, adapting was very important. Did you start off with a very different idea? I was wondering.
Oh yeah, we started off with initially it was just an idea that came from very far from education. Honestly, it was our like at work we have Slack, and
Yeah.
sometimes when when we are working on a project for like a couple of years and a new person comes in, there's really a lot of onboarding to do. So the idea was we can use AI just to summarize stuff, and this is how I got to understanding the power of, and it was a couple of years ago, the power of AI, Chat GPT, and how it all works and how we can combine that. Then basically I realized that like this whole thing can be applied to education, which I was always interested in. But then I don't know. It's hard to say how I come up with ideas, but during while I was implementing this whole thing, I basically landed at a couple of versions of product which were different. Some was more like Q&A, students asking some clarifying questions about the topic. Some was uh, basically customized learning, where AI would give you key facts, and then you could dig into any of any portion of the course, and you could basically, as a student, you could decide how deep you want to dive and how
Yeah.
much you want to learn about it. So the flexibility is just great, and it allows you to, I would say, the very process of coding or no coding,
Mhm.
it inspires ideas. It is powerful in itself.
Yeah. So it's also, I guess, similar to like many things where you just have to get started to sort of get better at it and sort of seeing the combinations. But it's interesting that you sort of take these ideas, you start in a very different way, but then in just a short term, in terms of time, short period, you can change a lot of things already. And that's yeah, it sounds like a very powerful way to do that. Do you think like if your idea is not entirely, you know, sort of very specific yet, that you should just get started? How would you approach that?
Yeah, I would say just get started. It helped me for sure. And by the way, this is not the only automation that I made. There was also automations in business, which allowed us to, yeah, basically to tie together different processes and uh, create a full picture that allows us to analyze the like how effective we are in my studio. And in that case, also, we started with one portion of the process. We figured it out, we automated it, we connected, it's just like two pieces together, then another one, and now it's like end to end, everything is in the same system, tied together and traceable. So
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that companies who are not sort of native development companies can learn. I think from like this type of industry, and also the design world, I think works like this in these quick iterations, where you take a small bit, you sort of make that work, and then you make sure that that works well, so you can sort of leave that alone and go into the next thing. And that iterative work really pays off, and instead of trying to think of everything in one go, because it's hard to oversee everything.
And the extra bonus is automation saves you time. You automate one thing, you have more time to automate other things.
That is, I think that compounding, indeed, like that compounding property of it is so powerful, and I think that once you experience that, it's sort of addictive in a way.
It is.
Yeah. And where do you want to take your product? I mean, yeah, it's now there. It's starting to take shape, and sort of I feel that the direction is more clear for you now. What's next for this for Alcie?
Well, yeah, direction is more clear right now. I want just to put together one course, which will not be tied into like any like university or education system. I would just give it to like potential students who would be like my first users. I will see how it goes. This will be like the first test, and then depending on how well it goes, we'll see. We'll see what's the potential. At some point, I need to fundraise, but I'm kind of afraid of that yet.
Okay, well, we have some experience with that, so maybe I can help you with that a little bit.
That would be precious.
Yeah. Let's see. That's all the questions that I have for now. But we do have some questions from other people that we want to put on. So let me put them on screen. Olivia asks, which subjects benefit the most from AI-driven learning? So that touches a little bit on what we said, like, hey, some subjects might be better suited or not. Which in your opinion would benefit most?
Well, it's hard to say because it's probably well, I tried to test how well it explains math and physics, and it was not ideal, but I'm sure AI will get better soon. I am sure that if we can overcome hallucinations, which we're kind of close to, and there are ways to, like, there are workarounds, it would be really good in terms of learning history and culture, because it structures things, and you can, if something is specifically interesting for you, you can dive deeper, and it's almost unlimited because it will feed you more and more information if you ask questions. So I think it's easier to say which subjects would not, and those would be subjects where you need to do like practical stuff.
That makes sense. It is true. Like the advances in AI are going really quickly, so it makes sense to sort of anticipate that it will understand these logical things. Let's see. Hannah wrote you an essay, I think. So this is going to take a while. Okay. It might be useful to reward practical use of AI tools where students can explain their logic and process. For example, the idea is you get more points when you, I think it means to show how you enhance your research or brainstorming using AI tools. And she's not sure whether this is being done already. So basically, to summarize, would you get extra points, sort of like, would that be an idea when you show how you've used AI in your learning process? It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Well, not really extra points. It's kind of required to explain how you used AI. But with my course, I really encourage students to do that because, well, the key policy of the course is be effective. Like use your time wisely. The course is quite complex. They're doing a real project, like in real life setting. So I really encourage that, but they need to report how they used AI. If they needed to do fact checking, they have to do fact checking, and basically where they took the information, how they used it.
Cool. Yeah. So basically, you would get minus points if you if you don't use AI.
Yes, if you don't use AI where you could use it and save yourself some time, yeah, that's not good.
That's a bad thing. That took you an hour. Oh no. Okay. Next one is by Sarah, and she asks, "What was the toughest decision you faced while building this tool?"
Um, I would say at certain point I had to stop myself because I really enjoy building things. I'm a designer. I finally got a tool which I can use, and the results of my work will not finish up in some Figma or design files,
Yeah.
but I got a real product. I really enjoyed it. I had to stop myself from continuing to improve it and start basically showing it to people and getting feedback, doing the right product thing.
Yeah, I've heard that more often of people who start with these things and you get caught up in sort of the building process because it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really cool. It's really cool to hear how sort of enthusiastic you get of actually doing the work, and then you have to sort of pull yourself back and say like, "Hey, wait, let's actually also do something that furthers the big idea of the whole thing."
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely recommend to anybody who is managing people or business owners, entrepreneurs. This is really so powerful. It's like, oh my God, like it's a thing that you needed all your life without really knowing that.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's how it is. Yeah. Let's see. Lauren asks, "How do you keep up with the latest AI and no-code trends?" I think that's an interesting question because you said like, "Hey, yeah, you see how AI is developing, so you seem to know a lot about it." How do you keep up?
Well, I would say it's kind of hard to keep up because things are going at a pretty fast pace. I listen to podcasts. There's a bunch of podcasts on Spotify, like different AI news. There's some podcasts like daily AI news, and it's like 10 minutes with like all the key things that happened. Uh, I don't do this like every day, but every once in a while, kind of every 2 weeks, I just deliberately listen to what happened, read online magazines, The Verge, and everything. So I guess this is how.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, because like you want to have something that sort of aggregates all the news. Because I also feel sometimes like it's so overwhelming, so many things are happening. How do you keep up? And then at the same time, also go in depth on some of the things. I guess.
Mhm.
How do you sort of get the background, like the deeper knowledge? Because it's to me, it sounds like you know pretty well how ChatGPT works and how you can use it in a process like this. So how did you find out information on that when you have like those 10 quick points in 10 minutes or something, then you want to dive into something deeper? How do you do that?
Well, there is a pretty powerful community here in Ukraine, AI community, and I have a couple of friends who are like serious deep learning developers, and sometimes I ask them. I guess if I need, yeah, if I need a deeper dive, I just ask people
Yeah,
who.
and sort of join a community if you can find one where you can ask questions and stuff. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
Midjourney has a really lively community. That's obviously for image generation, but it's if you see some of the images that people are able to create with like the right sets, and it's usually photographers. That's the thing that really amazes me, right? So it's like the more knowledge you have of sort of image building, to call it like that, the the greater the results you can get. So I think also with this, with like things like ChatGPT, with like you see, like I said, you've experimented a lot as well, so you know a lot about it at some point. I think that the more that you know about like the quirks maybe of prompting, they sort of help you to steer it quicker and be more effective at making prompts. Is that a correct assumption or not?
Well, of course, experience helps, but I would say when ChatGPT was switching from, well, as they released new versions, the new versions seemed to respond a bit differently to
Mhm.
prompts. But yeah, generally experiments work, and I also, again, YouTube helps a lot. I watched a couple of educational videos on like prompting, and that also really helped. And I would advise doing that to anybody who is using ChatGPT a lot or other AIs.
Cool, cool. That's I think all that we have. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank you.
today. I had a blast. Like I said, there's a million things that we can talk about. We stayed pretty much on course today, so that's good.
Thanks to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Perfect.
sharing your insights and all the things happening around ALSI.
Thank you.
So for everyone who is listening, we're back in 2 weeks with another episode. Hope to see you then. Thanks for tuning in, and see you around. Thanks, Olena.
Thank you.